Hi, I'm Paul Marcel. I wanted to do a quick review of the Festool OF-1400 mid-range router. Now, it comes in a Sys4. It comes with the patented Festool self-removing label. And now, this is a router that has a number of accessories for it, and the accessories list is as long as the whole list of bits that are available in the catalog. And so it's basically the Batman utility belt of routers available in the Festool line. Now, which also means that the sustainer is very well packed. So, we pull some of these things out as everything collapses down there. We have the router here. It's a plunge-based router. It plunges very easily. You can plunge just off on the side. The router itself has a little bit of a different ergonomic to it because of this handle situation. You've got this to lock and unlock the plunge, so you can lock it into place, unlock it fairly easily. This side here is going to be your trigger control, including a trigger lock. And the variable speed is conveniently located for your thumb. Well, convenient, I guess, if you're a righty. I don't know how it would go for the lefties. Now, the action of the router is a little bit different only because of this setup. Most people are used to having the handles off on the side. It takes a little bit of getting used to. I found it a little different the first 2 times out. Now, I don't find it any different than any other router. So just give it a go, and I think you're going to like it. Now, the router itself has... anything green is adjustable in some way. So what we have down here is we have a rocker switch that acts as a ratchet lock. Now the ratchet lock is going to be for changing out the bits. It's going to be the collet lock here. Now this kit comes, at least in North America, because we still insist on these inches things. We have, there's going to be an 8mm collet, a 1/4 inch collet, and then the 1/2 inch collet available in the kit. Now it comes with a single wrench, which is all that you're going to need in order to change out a bit, simply because of the ratchet lock. It conveniently sits on its side. One side of the rocker is for removing a bit, the other side of the rocker is for putting in the bit. I've got a bit hiding back here. And I'm sure you know where it comes from based on its color. So you just lock it into place. And cinch it down in place. Now for the dust collection on Festool is always one of its primary draws for people. Now this is a little tiny shroud that actually fits right in here, and what it does is it allows the bit, it would be primarily if you wouldn't be using a flush bit like what I put in here, but say it was a down spiral or up spiral bit that you were using to plow a dado, so all the dust is going to gather underneath in this recess here. That's what this dust shroud here would work well for. And it's got a little tiny window up here. Believe it or not, it took me quite a while to find that. I used this thing for a little over a year before. Okay, I can't do it backwards, I have to do it forward. And then what this does, sneaks around the bit, locks into place, and there's a little lever here that'll tap it down. So now, with this, you're going to get some reasonable dust collection. This hose here, or this tube here, connects to the D27 hose, inserts inside. If you have a D36 hose, actually, it'll wrap on the outside, and you'll get significantly more airflow, and it's much better for clearing out chips on a router since it's such a massive chip producer. So let me get this here out of the way. So this is one of your options for dust collection. Now there are several. We'll go through a few others here. One of the other things that's on this base, you'll see, are some green tabs here. What these are releases for the tabs that are down here below. There's some tab holes. Now this is a dust collection chip catcher, and what it does is it'll fit into these holes here, and you just give it a little push and it locks into place. One of the benefits that this gives you is that if you were to plunge, you can clearly see how this is going to help catch some of the chips that would normally fly away. It would hold them there so that this dust shroud would have a fighting chance at getting them. Now, of course, heavier chips are probably still going to make it down onto the ground, but for the most part, you can run pretty much dust-free if you don't try hogging off too much at a time. Now, the way you release this is simply pressing on these 2 tabs, which normally you can do when you don't have a camera on you. For some reason, that causes all sorts of difficulties. So, one of the things I wanted to mention about this is, let's take a look at this other unit. Now this is the edge guide that comes with the router that has this integrated, well, it is a removable part, but it is an integrated dust shroud for it. One of the benefits that this one would have, and you'd be able to see it pretty clearly here, is that when the edge guide is lined up so that the bearing on your bit, or at least the cutting surface of your bit, lines up flush with the fence that's here, you can see that clearly that bit is well inside that shroud. So you're going to get much better chip collection and extraction using this system than you would with this one here. However, this is only useful if you're going against a primarily straight edge. If you're doing anything curvilinear, especially if you have a concave curve, you're going to need this unit here. And actually, this one here comes cut straight 90, cut straight across, but it does have a few other marks laid out for you already in order to sort of open it up a bit more. So in my case, I did take a knife to it to cut it a little bit open, because I did do a curvilinear project where this was actually at the limit of the radius of that curve. So you can get these pretty easily through the Festool ECAT system, so if you have to get a couple of them for different radii that you're dealing with, it's not going to hurt your wallet too badly. Now, Festool has, of course, a number of guide bushings of their own, but then there's also this adapter guide bushing, so it takes the regular sort of de facto standard in the North American terms, the guide bushings. So this happens to be one that I used with the Lee D4R jig when I used it more recently. Now, this universal plate snaps in the same way, so you have a pretty quick exchange. Now, again, there are some Festool ones where they're all integrated. It's not a replaceable part like this, so in that case there you can very quickly switch in and out of different sizes. The guide rods, rather, are very long on this router, and one of the things I like, I do have one router I've used in the past where the guide rods would slide in and they actually would bottom out on the other end. So you were limited to always using them on the one side, which was annoying to say the least. With this one here, of course, you can slide this rod all the way through, and you're going to see why I call that a very nice key feature. So let's just put this so that it's sticking out on the one edge for right now, so I can show you how the edge guide works and some of the benefits of that. There's a very simple knob here that when you tighten it up, it cinches down on both of these rods. And they're actually very hefty rods, so you're not going to bend these terribly easily. And this is actually so you know, if you were to go look for the Festool Edge Guide, this is the older model. It's still the same part number, but they've changed the manufacture of it, and it's not quite it looks thinner, although it's still the same dimensions, but it looks thinner. It doesn't have quite as much of the reinforcing. I think they realized that it was just complete overkill, and they thinned it down a bit. I got lucky and I found a dealer that had an older one, so that's why I have this. So yours will look different if you're looking today. Now this just slides in. You have the two holes there. You slide this in. Of course, that's, we'll go a little bit further, but I don't want to teeter this thing off the edge, so let me just slide this back. Now there is a micro adjust knob here that you can see. Each digit is going to give you 1/10 of a millimeter, so one full turn is going to move it by a whole millimeter. Now what we can do is we just tighten these up, so now this is solid. Loosen this, and now you probably cannot see that on the video, but it is adjusting back and forth here as a micro adjust, and then this would lock it in to the final position. Now, one nice thing about these very long guide rods is that if you wanted to plow a dado or a groove just somewhere inside, and you could see wanting to do that, say if you were doing a small inlay or maybe even some stringing or some thin banding, you could easily inset this by 5 or 6 inches and then run the dado very easily off the edge for a very good registration. So that's one benefit of these nice long rails. These ride on the guide rail, and what it's going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to do guided cuts. So like I was saying with the edge guide, that it was nice that you could at least get about 5 inches in and run something parallel to the edge. With this, you can get back to the regular Festoolism of being able to lay the guide rail wherever you want and do an arbitrary line anywhere. So this is very useful, and in fact I have a project I did in the past. It was an inlay in a cork floor that I did for an entryway, putting in a French knot, and I actually used this router with the guide rails almost exclusively for laying out all the cuts. So if you look at that, you'll see a lot of different uses of these parts documented. Now, the way that this works is of course, these are actually interchangeable. You could put them either way. This one here happens to be tightened for this. You have some gibs here that you can adjust in order to tighten it up and get rid of the play as it rides on this part of the rail, and it interlocks in with the other stop. And this is going to give you the micro adjust. So if we put that there, we spin the router around, and I'll run it through the rods. And I need to get it until the base is partially on this rail. Okay, now I'll go ahead and I'll tighten this up. This one here is just a little bit snug. This one here I'm going to tighten down. Okay, so what I can do now is, now that it's tightened down, I can adjust this micro adjuster, and it's the same type of thing. Each digit's 1/10 of a millimeter, full turn being a whole millimeter. And what this is going to do is it's going to pull this, which is attached to the rails, which is attached to this. It's going to pull that whole unit towards this one that is fixed by the sort of the embossed, the rail portion. Then you can also push it away. Now, one problem with this, as you can clearly see, is it's not terribly stable. It wants to flip the router, it wants to drop off on the side. So this isn't the most elegant solution, but it does work. It comes with a little foot that you can attach to this outboard screw hole. So if you put that in there, get this thing level, push that thing down until it bottoms out, and tighten it up. So now you have outboard support, and it's going to be running smooth. Now, it actually does run pretty well. I guess I just call it inelegant because, of course, if you're pressing down hard or for whatever reason, you might get it to tilt over a little bit, so it's not quite as certain. You can couple it with an MFT, and you could run these stops and the router on this rail. Now, where that came in very, very useful for me is I did a cabinet that was 12 feet long by about 1 foot deep, so it's really long against the wall on a patio. And what I did is I needed some sliding dovetails everywhere that there would be basically an interior member dividing out the cabinet parts. So to run a 12-foot long board, to run these sliding dovetails would be crazy on a table and next to impossible. So of course you're going to need to do it with a handheld router. Now, the easiest way for me was to simply put that 12-foot board on here, slide it across until everything lined up, and then pull the router to make my sliding dovetail. So that was ridiculously easy because this is always squared up with the other piece here, which mine is currently removed. And it took no time at all. Now, how would I know where the routing is going to go? Normally, on the track saws, you create a zero clearance edge here, correct? By putting the track saw on here and cutting it so that this is exactly lined up to the edge of the curve. That's not the case here at all. For one thing, the bits are all different sizes. You've micro adjusted it on and off the table, so how do you know where it goes? For that, this router actually has, actually I'll take that off so you can see this better. There's an embossing right here that indicates the center of the bit. There's a little recess here that indicates the center of the bit. There's actually one on this side as well, but I have this in place. And this foot actually, when it sits in here, it's centered inside of a recess, and it has markings on here, so the 0 point is the center of the bit. And it's actually kind of nice that you do have markings here to tell you 20 millimeters in either direction. So if you were to mark out where you wanted to put a mortise and how far you wanted the mortise, and you knew the curvature of the mortise by the radius of the bit, you could use this to know exactly where you needed to stop. You could put the mark on the outside. You wouldn't have to be peering in there to try seeing where the edge of the bit went. You could do it strictly off of these markings. So that is one of the cool benefits of this foot, and you can actually use it with one other solution I have that I'll be showing you in a moment. So definitely, if you can couple this with these guide stops, which I believe these are an accessory, with your MFT, sliding dovetails, you can just crank through those in no time flat. So one thing about this guide rail, now the way that I have that foot, I was saying that there's a different way of doing it that I think is a little bit more superior. Now there is another optional accessory. See, the Batman utility belt was so full I couldn't put this in the box. So this is called the table widener. I know, sometimes the terms aren't always that clear what they really mean. So what this is, apparently this is a table, what we call a router base out here. So it's not the most convenient one to put on. Like if you've seen the OF-1400, the bases simply snap on and off. In fact, they snap on and off very similarly to the way that the guides snap on and off to the bottom here. The way that this one here will work is that you have to remove the, I believe, 5 screws, yes, the 5 screws on the bottom here to take off this existing base, and then you replace it with this base. Now this base is significantly larger, so that's why they call it the table widener, so it's a bit more stable, but you don't really care about that, at least I don't care about that in my use, for a couple reasons.